What happens when a respected actor sits down for what should be a routine late-night interview, only to find himself trapped in an increasingly hostile interrogation that exposes the dark side of celebrity journalism? Tonight, we dive deep into one of the most shocking moments in late-night television history, where things went so wrong that Jude Law had no choice but to walk away from it all. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about hosts who cross the line with their guests. Now, let's get into what really happened that night. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was supposed to be a safe space for celebrities, a place where they could promote their latest projects while engaging in light, witty banter with one of television's most beloved hosts. But on this particular evening, something was different about Stephen Colbert. There was an edge to his demeanor, a sharpness in his voice that his longtime viewers had never seen before. Jude Law walked onto the stage with his characteristic charm and confidence. The British actor, known for his roles in films like Sherlock Holmes and the talented Mr. Ripley, had been making the rounds promoting his latest psychological thriller. He settled into the guest chair with a warm smile, expecting the usual pleasantries and softball questions about his craft and upcoming projects. "Jude Law, everyone," Colbert announced to the audience, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for having me, Stephen." "Always a pleasure," Jude replied, his British accent lending an air of sophistication to the exchange. But instead of diving into the typical questions about his new film, Colbert leaned back in his chair and fixed Jude with an intense stare. "So, Jude, let's talk about something that's been on everyone's mind. Your reputation in Hollywood." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the tone they were used to hearing from their beloved host. Jude's smile faltered slightly, but he maintained his composure. "My reputation. I'm not sure what you're getting at, Stephen." Colbert's laugh was cold, lacking any warmth. "Oh, come on, Jude. We both know there have been whispers, stories about how you conduct yourself on set, how you treat people who work for you. Surely you're aware of what people are saying." The studio fell silent. Even the usually responsive audience seemed stunned by the unexpected turn in conversation. Jude straightened in his chair, his professional mask beginning to slip. "I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion here. I came on your show to discuss my work, not to address unfounded rumors or gossip." But Colbert wasn't backing down. If anything, he seemed energized by Jude's discomfort. "Unfounded? That's interesting, because I have it on good authority that several crew members from your recent projects have had some very specific complaints about your behavior." The camera zoomed in on Jude's face, capturing the moment when confusion turned to genuine concern. He glanced toward the wings, perhaps looking for his publicist or someone from his team, but found no rescue coming. "Stephen, I'm really not comfortable with this line of questioning. If you have specific allegations, perhaps we should discuss this privately rather than turning it into entertainment for your audience." Colbert leaned forward, his voice taking on a predatory quality. "But isn't that what this is all about, Jude? Entertainment. You're here to sell a movie, to present a carefully crafted image of yourself to my viewers. But what if they knew the real you? What if they knew about the tantrums, the demands, the way you've allegedly treated people who can't fight back?" The tension in the studio was palpable. Audience members were looking at each other uncertainly, unsure whether this was some kind of elaborate bit, or if they were witnessing something genuinely uncomfortable unfold in real time. Jude's hands clenched slightly in his lap, but his voice remained controlled. "I'm going to ask you one more time to redirect this conversation toward my work. I've been acting professionally for over 2 decades, and I've built relationships with directors, producers, and crew members that span my entire career. If you have genuine concerns about something, this is not the appropriate forum." "Appropriate forum?" Colbert's voice rose slightly. "This is my show, Jude. This is exactly the appropriate forum. You came here asking for my platform, my audience's attention, and now you want to dictate how I use it." The host's mask was completely off now. Gone was the playful comedian that audiences loved, replaced by something much darker and more aggressive. It was as if Colbert had been waiting for this moment, planning this ambush with calculated precision. "You know what I find fascinating about actors like you?" Colbert continued, not waiting for a response. You think that because you can memorize lines and hit your marks, you're somehow above accountability. You think that charm and talent give you a free pass to treat people however you want. Jude's jaw tightened. I think you have me confused with someone else, Stephen. I've never claimed to be above accountability, and I certainly don't treat people poorly. This entire conversation seems to be based on assumptions and hearsay rather than facts. Facts. Colbert laughed harshly. Let me give you some facts. Fact number 1, 3 different people who worked on your last film have reached out to entertainment. Journalists with stories about your behavior. Fact number 2, you've been known to keep entire crews waiting while you perfect your performance, costing productions thousands of dollars. Fact number 3, you've created hostile work environments that have driven talented people away from projects. The audience was now completely silent, the festive atmosphere of a late-night talk show having transformed into something resembling a courtroom drama. Jude looked genuinely shocked by the specificity of Colbert's accusations. Those are not facts, Stephen. Those are allegations, and serious ones that I've never heard before tonight. But Colbert was relentless, ambushing you. You agreed to come on this show. You knew there would be questions. Did you really think I would just sit here and let you promote your movie without addressing the elephant in the room? What elephant? Jude's voice was rising now, his famous composure finally beginning to crack. You're talking about rumors and gossip as if they're established facts. You're making accusations without giving me any opportunity to understand. What you're actually referring to, the camera captured every micro-expression on both men's faces. Colbert's satisfaction at getting under his guest's skin, and Jude's growing realization that he had walked into something far more dangerous than a simple interview. Let me be more specific then, Colbert said, pulling out a piece of paper from his desk. During the filming of your recent thriller, you allegedly screamed at a young production assistant for bringing you the wrong coffee. You then had that assistant removed from the set permanently. Care to comment on that? Jude's eyes flashed with anger. That is completely false. I have never, ever screamed at anyone on a film set, let alone had someone fired over coffee. Where are you getting this information? I have my sources, Colbert replied smugly, and my sources are very reliable. Your sources are lying, Jude shot back, his voice carrying the full weight of his outrage. This is character assassination, Stephen. This is you using your platform to spread malicious lies about me for your own entertainment. The confrontation was escalating rapidly, and it was becoming clear that this was no longer a simple misunderstanding. Something deeper and more personal was driving Colbert's aggressive behavior, and Jude was beginning to realize just how precarious his position had become. The studio audience was witnessing something unprecedented. What had started as a routine celebrity interview had devolved into a public interrogation, and Stephen Colbert showed no signs of letting up. His demeanor had transformed completely, revealing a side of the beloved host that no one in that studio, including his own production team, had ever seen before. Jude Law sat rigid in his chair, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. The false accusations were piling up, and with each passing moment, it became clearer that this wasn't a case of mistaken identity or poor research. This was deliberate, calculated, and deeply personal. You know what's interesting, Jude? Colbert continued, his voice dripping with false sincerity. I've been in this business for a long time, and I've learned to read people. Right now, your body language is telling me everything I need to know. The way you're sitting, the way you're avoiding eye contact when I mention specific incidents, that's not the behavior of an innocent man. Jude's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. My body language. Stephen, you're analyzing my posture like some amateur psychologist, while making completely fabricated accusations against my character. Of course I'm uncomfortable. Anyone would be uncomfortable being blindsided with lies on national television. Lies. Colbert's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. That's a very strong word. Jude, are you calling my sources liars? I'm calling your information false? Yes. And I'm starting to wonder why you're so invested in destroying my reputation tonight. What is this really about, Stephen? Because it clearly isn't about promoting my film or having a normal conversation. The host leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He was enjoying this, feeding off Jude's growing frustration and anger. Maybe it's about accountability. Maybe it's about time someone called out the entitled behavior that's become so normalized in your industry. Entitled behavior? Jude's voice was rising again, and this time he made no effort to control it. You want to talk about entitled behavior? Let's talk about a talk show host who thinks he has the right to ambush his guests with unsubstantiated rumors. Let's talk about someone who uses his platform to bully and humiliate people for entertainment. The audience was completely silent now, torn between loyalty to their beloved host and growing sympathy for what appeared to be an increasingly unfair attack on the actor. Some were even beginning to shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that they were witnessing something that had crossed a line. Colbert's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. Bully, that's rich, coming from someone who allegedly bullies his own colleagues. Tell me, Jude, how does it feel to be on the receiving end for once? For once, Jude stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. Stephen, I have never bullied anyone in my life. I don't know where you're getting your information, but it's wrong. It's all wrong, and you're destroying my reputation based on lies. Sit down, Jude, Colbert commanded, his voice taking on an authoritative tone. We're not finished here. But Jude remained standing, his chest heaving with barely controlled rage. Actually, Stephen, I think we are finished. This isn't an interview. This is a hit job, and I won't sit here and let you continue to assassinate my character for the entertainment of your audience. A hit job? Colbert laughed coldly. This is journalism, Jude. This is what happens when someone finally asks the hard questions instead of lobbing you softballs about your craft and your process. Journalism. Jude's voice cracked with disbelief. You call making up stories about people journalism? You call ambushing guests with fabricated allegations journalism? This is tabloid behavior. Stephen, this is beneath you, and beneath the respect your audience has placed in you. The camera operators were clearly unsure how to handle the situation. They continued filming, but there was a palpable tension among the crew as well. This was uncharted territory for everyone involved. Colbert stood up as well, matching Jude's aggressive posture. You know what I think, Jude? I think you're panicking because someone finally had the courage to confront you with the truth. I think you're so used to being coddled and protected by your handlers that you can't handle real scrutiny. Real scrutiny. Jude stepped closer to the host's desk, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You want real scrutiny? Let's scrutinize your behavior tonight. Let's talk about how you've violated every principle of fair journalism and decent human interaction. Let's talk about how you've used your position of power to humiliate and attack someone who came here in good faith. Good faith, Colbert scoffed. You came here to sell a movie, to use my show as free advertising for your latest project. Don't pretend this was about anything noble or artistic. And you invited me here under false pretenses, Jude shot back. You promised a standard interview, and instead, you've orchestrated this public execution. Do you have any idea what this kind of baseless accusation can do to someone's career? To their family? To their mental health? For the first time since the interview began, Colbert seemed to hesitate, but the moment passed quickly and his aggressive demeanor returned. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started. Treating people poorly on your film sets. I have never treated anyone poorly, Jude said through gritted teeth, and the fact that you keep repeating these lies doesn't make them true. Where is your evidence, Stephen? Where are these alleged victims? Where is anything concrete to support these character assassinations you're throwing around? I don't have to provide you with evidence, Colbert replied smugly. This is my show, and I'll conduct it however I see fit. Your show, Jude's voice, was incredulous. This is a public platform, Stephen. You have a responsibility to your audience, to the truth, to basic human decency. You can't just make up stories about people because you feel like it. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. Even the production staff were exchanging worried glances, clearly unsure whether they should intervene or continue. Filming, the audience sat in stunned silence, many of them looking genuinely distressed by what they were witnessing. Colbert seemed to realize he was losing the room, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. You know what, Jude? Maybe this is exactly what you needed. Maybe someone needed to knock you down a peg to remind you that actions have consequences. Actions. Jude's voice was barely controlled, fury now. What actions? You haven't described. A single specific action I've actually taken. You've thrown around vague accusations and unnamed sources, But you haven't presented one concrete example of anything I've actually done wrong. I don't need to justify myself to you, Colbert replied coldly. No, but you need to justify yourself to your audience, Jude shot back, gesturing toward the crowd. Look at them, Stephen. Look at their faces. They came here expecting entertainment, expecting the warm, intelligent host they love and trust. Instead, they're watching you destroy someone's reputation for sport. Several audience members were indeed looking uncomfortable, and a few had even started whispering among themselves. The festive atmosphere of a late-night talk show had been completely shattered, replaced by something ugly and disturbing. Colbert glanced at his audience, and for a moment his confidence seemed to waver, but then his expression hardened again. They're getting a real show tonight. They're seeing what happens when someone finally refuses to play along with the Hollywood publicity machine. The Hollywood publicity machine. Jude laughed bitterly. Stephen, you are the publicity machine. You're part of the same system you're pretending to criticize. The only difference is that tonight, you've decided to use your platform as a weapon instead of a bridge. Maybe it's time this industry had more weapons and fewer bridges, Colbert replied, his voice cold and calculating. That statement seemed to hang in the air like a threat, and Jude realized that whatever was driving Colbert's behavior tonight, it went far deeper than professional jealousy or journalistic integrity. This was personal, vindictive, and deliberately cruel. The beloved late-night host had revealed something dark and ugly beneath his public persona, and Jude was beginning to understand that there would be no reasoning with him, no appeal to his better nature, because tonight, Stephen Colbert had chosen to embrace his worst impulses. The moment had arrived where something had to give. The toxic atmosphere in the studio was suffocating, and even the cameras seemed to struggle to capture the raw intensity of what was unfolding. Stephen Colbert's transformation from beloved comedian to something far more sinister was complete, and Jude Law was about to make a decision that would define this entire encounter. You know what I find most disturbing about this whole situation, Stephen? Jude said, his voice now deadly calm, in contrast to the heated exchange they'd been having. It's not just that you're willing to destroy someone's reputation with lies. It's that you seem to be enjoying it. You're feeding off this cruelty like some kind of predator. Colbert's eyes lit up with a disturbing gleam. Predator. That's quite an accusation coming from someone with your alleged track record. There it is again, Jude said, shaking his head in disgust. Alleged, supposed, rumored. You keep using these words because you know you have nothing concrete. You're building an entire character assassination on gossip and innuendo, and you're doing it with a smile on your face. The audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Several people in the front rows were looking toward the exits, and the usual energy of a live taping had been completely drained from the room. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something far darker and more disturbing. Let me ask you something, Stephen, Jude continued, his British accent lending gravity to every word. What happened to you? What turned you into this? Because the Stephen Colbert that people love, the one they invite into their homes every night, would never behave this way. The Stephen Colbert I thought I knew would be horrified by what you're doing right now. For a split second, something flickered across Colbert's face, doubt, perhaps, or recognition of how far he'd fallen. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by renewed hostility. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me, Colbert snapped. You don't know anything about me or what I've been through in this industry. You don't know what it's like to watch entitled actors waltz through life without consequences while good people suffer. Good people suffer. Jude's voice rose again. Stephen, you are making good people suffer right now. You're making your audience suffer by forcing them to watch this ugliness. You're making your staff suffer by putting them in this impossible position, and you're making me suffer by attacking my character with fabricated stories. Colbert laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, please, spare me the victim routine. You make millions of dollars pretending to be other people. You live in mansions and drive expensive cars and get treated like royalty everywhere you go. Forgive me if I don't shed any tears for your suffering. This isn't about money or fame or lifestyle, Jude replied, his voice heavy with disappointment. This is about basic human decency. This is about truth versus lies. This is about using power responsibly instead of as a weapon to hurt people. Hurt people? Colbert's voice was mocking now. You mean like the people you've allegedly hurt throughout your career? The assistants? The crew members? The people whose names we'll never know because they don't have the platform to defend themselves? For the last time, Stephen, I have never hurt anyone in my career. These allegations you keep referring to don't exist. These sources you claim to have are figments of your imagination, or worse, deliberate fabrications designed to justify this. Ambush Colbert slammed his hand down on his desk, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent studio. You know what your problem is, Jude? You're so used to being protected, so used to having your public relations team control every narrative, that you can't handle someone who refuses to play by your rules. My rules? Jude stepped back, his face a mask of disbelief. Stephen, my only rule is honesty. My only expectation was that I would be treated with basic respect and fairness. Instead, you've turned this into some kind of twisted power game, where you get to destroy someone's reputation for your own entertainment. The camera operators were clearly struggling with whether to continue filming. This had gone so far beyond the bounds of normal television that they seemed unsure of their professional obligations. The director could be heard whispering urgently into his headset, probably getting guidance from network executives who were watching this disaster unfold in real time. You want to talk about power games? Colbert stood up again, leaning over his desk toward Jude. Let's talk about the power you wield on film sets. Let's talk about how you can make or break careers with a word. How you can have people fired or blacklisted if they don't cater to your every whim. That is not who I am, Jude said firmly, and the fact that you keep insisting it is tells me everything I need to know about your character and nothing about mine. My character Colbert's voice was incredulous. I'm not the one being accused of abusing my position. Actually, Stephen, that's exactly what you're doing right now. You're abusing your position as host of this show to attack someone who can't defend themselves effectively because they're trapped in your studio, on your stage, surrounded by your audience and your cameras. The truth of that statement seemed to land with the studio audience. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and for the first time all evening, Colbert looked genuinely uncomfortable. He had lost the room, and he knew it. I think we should take a break, someone from the production team called out, but Colbert waved them off angrily. No breaks, he snapped. We're finishing this conversation. Actually, Stephen, we're not, Jude said with quiet finality. I'm done. I'm done with your lies. I'm done with your accusations. And I'm done with whatever personal vendetta you're trying to work out at my expense. Jude turned toward the audience, his voice carrying clearly through the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, I came here tonight to talk about my work, to share some stories, and to hopefully entertain you. Instead, you've been forced to witness something that no one should have to see. I apologize that your evening has been ruined by this display of unprofessional behavior. The audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. They were clearly grateful that someone had finally acknowledged how uncomfortable and wrong the entire situation had become. Colbert's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Don't you dare turn my audience against me, he snarled. I'm not turning anyone against you, Stephen, Jude replied calmly. You've done that entirely on your own. Your audience came here tonight expecting the host they know and love, and instead they've seen something ugly and cruel. That's not my fault, that's yours. Get back in your chair, Colbert demanded. We're not finished. Yes, we are, Jude said firmly. He began walking toward the edge of the stage, but Colbert wasn't ready to let him go. Stage, everyone will know you're guilty, Colbert called after him. Everyone will know that you couldn't handle being confronted with the truth about yourself. Jude stopped and turned back one final time. Stephen, the only truth that's been revealed here tonight is about you. You've shown your audience, your staff, and the world exactly what kind of person you really are when you think no one will hold you accountable. You've revealed yourself to be a bully, a liar, and someone who takes pleasure in cruelty. With that, Jude Law walked off the stage, leaving behind a stunned audience and a host whose reputation would never recover from what had just transpired. The cameras kept rolling as Colbert stood alone at his desk, finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done and the price he would pay for it. The silence in the studio was deafening. Stephen Colbert had destroyed not just his guest's evening, but his own career, and everyone in that room knew they had witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. What did you think about this incredible confrontation? Was Jude Law right to walk off, or should he have stayed to defend himself further? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking celebrity stories that reveal the truth behind the Hollywood facade.